The heavy thump of music slammed through the glass walls of the luxurious villa, blending with the loud laughter of second-year business majors celebrating the weekend with an all-out villa party. Colorful lights reflected off the surface of the swimming pool, creating a spinning, kaleidoscopic illusion. On a leather sofa in a slightly quieter corner, Yin leaned back, watching the chaos unfold. Beside her, Jungkook sipped from a cold can of soda, his eyes occasionally drifting back to her with that familiar, attentive look. "You sure you don't want to mingle a bit?" Jungkook asked, raising his voice over the pounding bass. "It's a huge party, Yin. Don't tell me you're spending the night mentally doing a SWOT analysis on everyone here." They sat close, their shoulders brushing lightly, an intimacy that had existed since the days when they used to share crayon boxes in kindergarten. Yin smiled faintly, a smile that always felt a little awkward whenever she was within 3 meters of Jungkook. Her heart, as usual, skipped out of rhythm every time he said her name. "I've already overanalyzed enough for my business ethics assignment this week, Jungkook. I just want to enjoy the view. And the view here isn't bad, right?" She tilted her chin toward the crowd, though her eyes quickly drifted back to the sharp line of Jungkook's jaw. Jungkook chuckled. "The view you're talking about, does that include those 3 stacked plastic cups over there, or?" "Could be," Yin replied, trying to sound casual even though every nerve in her body was on edge. "What about you? Aren't you usually hanging out with your group by now?" "I'm keeping an eye on you." The answer came out simple and automatic. But to Yin, those words were the most dangerous melody she had ever heard. "Keeping an eye on me? I'm not a kid anymore, Jungkook." Jungkook leaned forward, his gaze now serious, unfiltered. "You know why? There's too much going on tonight, and you panic easily. If something happens, I want to be the first one there." Their relationship was a paradox. They were so close that there was no room for secrets. Yet Yin's feelings were the biggest secret of all, locked deep inside her soul by one suffocating fear: the fear of losing this friendship if her love was rejected. "All right, Mr. Security Guard," Yin said, lightly patting his hand. "But I'm thirsty. Can I grab a drink without my personal bodyguard following me?" "Go ahead, just don't take the dark purple one. They mixed way too much soda into that." Yin nodded and walked away. The crowd around the mini kitchen was packed. Yin had to push past a few people dancing carelessly in her way. Her eyes landed on a tray filled with plastic cups containing a clear liquid. It looked like mineral water, or maybe an overly diluted fruit punch. Without thinking twice, she grabbed the cup closest to the edge. Her throat was dry, and she downed it almost in one go. Something felt off. It wasn't very sweet, slightly bitter, and it left a sudden burning warmth sliding down her throat. Yin turned, ready to head back to Jungkook. But after only a few steps, she felt something strange, an unfamiliar heat blooming from deep in her stomach, spreading up into her chest, and slowly creeping through the rest of her body. She returned to the sofa, fanning herself with her hand. "What was that drink?" Jungkook asked, noticing Yin's flushed face before glancing at the empty cup in her hand. "I don't know. It tasted kinda sharp." Yin set the cup down. A few minutes passed. Their conversation about the introduction to creative economy class started to feel distant and irrelevant. Yin felt as if the room temperature had suddenly risen, or maybe it was just her own body. Cold sweat formed along her temples. More worrying than that, a strange and urgent sensation began creeping through her stomach, slowly rising, igniting every sense she had. This wasn't ordinary alcohol dizziness. It was a sudden, aggressive physical need, hitting her without mercy. She shifted her legs unconsciously, trying to find a comfortable position, but all she felt was growing restlessness. "Yin, are you okay? You look really pale," Jungkook said, reaching for her hand. The touch, one she usually cherished, now felt like a spark against her skin. I don't know, Jungkook. Something feels wrong." Yin closed her eyes, trying to steady her now uneven breathing. "It's so hot in here. I need some air." Jungkook stood up immediately. "Come on, let's go to the balcony. You probably need some cool air." He guided Yin away from the crowd, through a quiet hallway, toward the back terrace overlooking the dark forest. As soon as they reached the open area, Yin took a deep breath, but the cold night air failed to calm the fire burning inside her. The sensation had completely taken over now. All the fear and shame she had carried for so long suddenly disappeared. She found herself leaning against the wall, her usually warm gaze turning dark, something different in it. Jungkook, rummaging through his bag for a bottle of water, noticed the shift in her presence. "You're really not okay, Yin. We should go home, now." "Don't." Her voice was hoarse, low, nothing like the voice Jungkook was used to. She took 2 steps forward, closing the distance between them until there was almost no space left. She tilted her head up, her eyes searching for his in the dim light. I don't want to go home. I want something else. Jungkook swallowed hard. He could feel the heat radiating from her body. You've had too much to drink. Or maybe they mixed something cheap in there. You need rest, he said, trying to keep his voice calm and logical. No, Jungkook, it's not alcohol. I'm not drunk. Yin grabbed the collar of his shirt, gripping the fabric like it was her only anchor in a storm. I need you. Jungkook froze. Yin, listen to me. You don't realize what you're saying. You're panicking. I'm not panicking, Yin snapped, tears suddenly pooling in her eyes, not from sadness, but pure frustration. I don't know what was in that damn glass, but my body is on fire, Jungkook. And you're the only one I want. The only one I've ever wanted. Jungkook shook his head, gently trying to loosen her grip, afraid of hurting her. I'm not gonna take advantage of this, Yin. You're under the influence of something. Why do you always have to be the good guy? Yin whispered, her voice breaking with desperation. I've been holding this in for too long, Jungkook. I've loved you for years. She rose onto her toes, slowly lifting both hands to rest on his shoulders, her face only inches away from Jungkook's. Kiss me, Yin whispered. Jungkook still refused. He could see his own reflection in Yin's glassy eyes. Guilt and his instinct to protect her were clashing hard inside him. I can't, Yin. Just think about this tomorrow morning. You're gonna regret it, he said quietly. The rejection only ignited Yin's desperation. She had already pushed her shame as far down as it could go. Yin took a small step back, her lips trembling, but her eyes remained defiant. Fine, she said coldly, even though the fire inside her was nearly consuming her. If you don't want to help me, that's fine. I'll go back inside. I'll have fun with whomever I want. And you, don't you dare interfere later. The threat hit Jungkook like a slap of ice. His expression hardened. The concern and hesitation in his eyes were replaced by a mix of protective anger and deep, aching hurt. The thought of Yin seeking comfort in another man, any man, made his blood boil. The jealousy he had buried for years, hidden neatly under the label best friend, finally exploded. He wasn't going to let that happen. He didn't care about the consequences tomorrow. He only knew one thing. If anyone was going to touch her tonight, it had to be him. Jungkook grabbed her wrist. The change in him was sudden and drastic. His eyes darkened, mirroring the same fierce desire burning in hers. You're not going anywhere, he growled, his voice low and dangerous as he leaned closer. If this is really what you want, Yin, he whispered, his words shattering every wall their friendship had ever built, then remember one thing, you're only doing this with me. Yin flinched at the shift in his emotions. Jungkook didn't give her time to protest. He pulled her along, leading her through a quiet hallway toward the guest rooms of the villa. Finding an unlocked door, he pushed her inside and shut it quickly. The room was dark, lit only by moonlight slipping in through a small window. Yin stumbled back against the wall. Her body reacted instantly, adrenaline mixing with the intensity of Jungkook's bold move. You asked for this, Jungkook whispered as he walked toward her. Yeah, I did, she replied, her voice barely audible, yet filled with certainty. Jungkook cupped her face, and without the slightest hesitation, their lips met in a kiss that was urgent, desperate, and impossible to resist, a kiss delayed for years by the fragile label of friendship they had tried so hard to protect. Jungkook knew Yin wasn't fully clear-headed, but he also knew her threat had been real, and the jealousy burning inside him felt far more real than any regret that might come with morning. Yin could not be with another man. Morning light crept in through the gap in the half-drawn curtains, painting sharp golden lines across the rumpled satin sheets. Yin blinked, her eyelids heavy and swollen. Her head throbbed, not the dull ache of lack of sleep, but a sharp pain, like an echo of the pounding bass she'd heard the night before. It took her a few seconds to realize where she was. This wasn't her bedroom. A foreign scent filled the air, the villa's laundry detergent mixed with skin, sweat, and a very familiar hint of a man's eau de toilette. A movement beside her made Yin turn her head. Jungkook was lying next to her, flat on his back. One arm was folded behind his head, his eyes open, staring up at the dim ceiling. His black hair fell messily over his forehead. He wasn't wearing a shirt. He'd clearly been awake longer than she had. Reality hit Yin fast and brutally, like being thrown into icy water. Everything that had felt hazy and overwhelming last night was now painfully clear, detailed, unavoidable, and humiliating. The heat, the desperation, the confession that had slipped from her lips. It had all been real. Yin immediately pulled the thick blanket up to her chin. Right now, she truly wanted to disappear, to sink into nothingness and be gone. You're awake, Jungkook said flatly. His voice carried no emotion, but beneath it lay a deep, unmistakable exhaustion. What time is it? Yin's voice came out hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Not that early. Around 8. Jungkook finally turned toward her, propping himself up on one elbow, looking at Yin with eyes full of conflict. Those eyes were usually warm, playful, and easy to read. This morning, they looked like bottomless black holes. We need to get out of here before anyone wakes up. Yin hurried to sit on the edge of the bed, making sure the blanket stayed firmly wrapped around her. Why the rush? Jungkook asked. You scared someone might see us? The words landed like a whip. Yin turned to face him. Of course I'm scared. What did you expect? Jungkook, we just ruined everything. Jungkook let out a long breath, then sat up as well, leaning back against the headboard. He pulled the blanket over his lower body, even though Yin had already seen him, touched him. Ruined everything? He repeated. That's how you define what happened last night. Then what do you want me to call it? A science experiment? Yin snapped. It was a huge mistake, Jungkook. That's what it was. I don't even know what got into me last night, but we shouldn't have done this. We're friends. Jungkook gave a dry smile, one that never reached his eyes. Right, friends. Sounds like a very timely reminder. Why didn't you just stop me? Yin asked, her voice trembling as she fought to hold back the shame that had come rushing back this morning after disappearing the night before. You knew I was under the influence of something. You saw how panicked and out of control I was. Haven't you always been the one who looks out for me? You're always the rational one, never reckless. So why did you go along with my stupid request last night? Yin stopped, covering her face in frustration. You wanna know why I didn't stop you? Jungkook hissed, locking his gaze onto Yin's eyes. It's because you didn't just make that stupid request, Yin. You said you loved me, and that was the most real thing I've ever known about you. Yin swallowed hard. That was the one thing she had been most afraid to talk about, the secret that was never supposed to come out. I didn't know what I was saying, she denied, even though her voice was shaking. Oh, you knew, Jungkook insisted. Maybe that drink loosened you up, but it didn't create those feelings out of nothing. You admitted what you'd been hiding all this time. And then, when I tried to play your so-called honorable hero, you threatened to give yourself to another guy just to have fun? That was just an empty threat. No, it wasn't, Jungkook cut in. His voice stayed soft, but it was packed with barely restrained emotion. To me, it was real, and it was terrifying. You said you needed someone, Yin, and I couldn't stand the idea of someone else putting out a fire that I knew I could put out myself. I know it was selfish. I know it wasn't right, but I couldn't handle the thought of another man touching you. He moved closer, gripping Yin's shoulders and forcing her to look straight at him. I've been looking out for you for 15 years, Yin. I've been your shield, your safe place, but I have limits too. When you finally stepped out of your shell and asked me, when I saw that desire in your eyes, the desire I've always wanted to see there, I couldn't say no. I couldn't let go of the chance to have you, even if it was only for a few wrong hours. Yin sucked in a sharp breath, tears welling up again, not because of the kisses or the touches, but because of the truth in Jungkook's words. They had both buried these feelings under layers of friendship, and last night, that bomb had gone off. So you're admitting you took advantage of me? Yin asked bitterly. Jungkook shook his head, letting go of her as if her skin burned. He moved back, rubbing his exhausted face. No, Jungkook corrected quietly. What I'm admitting now is that I love you too, and I was stupid for letting that feeling override my common sense. I should have taken you to the hospital, but instead, I dragged you into bed. A suffocating silence filled the room. The distant sound of waves and faint laughter from outside, proof that the party hadn't fully ended, felt like mockery. I can't deal with this, Yin whispered, lowering her gaze. I can't deal with the fact that we ruined our friendship for what? One wrong moment, pushed by some cheap substance. It was more than a moment, Jungkook said softly. Yin looked away, then said with a trembling voice, Jungkook, let's forget this. Let's just act like it never happened. Jungkook closed his eyes, a sharp ache piercing his chest. He knew exactly what Yin was asking for. She was asking him to lie to himself, to mutilate the most intimate memory they had ever shared. You can't just pretend I never kissed you, Yin, he protested. You can't pretend our touches never happened. Let's forget it, Yin said, her voice firm but shaking. Or we won't be able to stay friends like we used to. I want us to go back to how we were. Jungkook let out a laugh, one with no humor in it. Go back? You think it's that easy? You think you can just erase this feeling, Yin? Your scent. The way you said my name? I can't erase that. I can't look at you without remembering you beneath me. Everything we did last night was honest. You'll never be able to deny that. Yin squeezed her eyes shut, tears now streaming down her cheeks. Fine, then let's call last night a mistake, not something we did from our hearts. Jungkook held his breath for a moment, staring at her in disbelief. Yin, you're asking for too much, he said quietly. You're asking me to pretend I don't want you, when I've wanted you since we were 17. I've loved you since we were 12. Yin shook her head hard. Please, Jungkook, do what I'm asking. Don't treat last night like it meant something serious. Never bring it up again. Don't remember it, because if you do, you'll really lose me. I won't stay close to you anymore. Jungkook finally let out a slow breath and looked away from her. Alright, if that's what you want, he said, swallowing hard, like he was forcing down a thorn. As always, I'll do what you want. Just don't distance yourself from me. He looked back at her more gently. But I need to protect my heart too, he said softly. So I won't keep hoping for you anymore. Honestly, after everything that happened, and after you asked me to pretend tonight never happened, it really hurt. Yin lowered her head. She couldn't bear to look at him like this. I'm sorry, Jungkook, she whispered. From that moment on, Yin began to realize something was wrong, not because of their fights, but because of the absence. Jungkook was still there. They still spent time together. He still walked beside her, still sat next to her, still spoke to her in the same tone. But his presence now felt close, yet unreachable. Something had changed, colder, quieter. Maybe this was Jungkook's way of protecting his heart, so he wouldn't hope anymore. That night, Yin sat alone in her room, her back pressed against the locked door. Her phone lay beside her, the screen dark, not a single message from the name she always waited for. Her tears fell silently, not because Jungkook had changed, but because she realized she was the one who asked for that change. This is my fault, she whispered, covering her face. I'm the one who created this distance. She wasn't crying because she had lost Jungkook completely. She was crying because Jungkook kept his promise. He didn't walk away from her, but he still had to protect his heart. And somehow, this hurt more than secretly loving him for years. Now, Yin had to hold all the chaos in her heart alone, without being able to share her sadness with Jungkook anymore, just like she always used to. But Jungkook noticed what was happening to Yin. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't ignore her. He saw the way she often drifted off into her thoughts, the way her smile came a little too late, the way her eyes looked tired, even when her lips said, I'm fine. And deep inside, Jungkook knew this was bound to happen. He just never expected it to hurt this much, watching the person he loved break because of her own choice. Until finally, that afternoon, Jungkook's car moved slowly away from the campus area. Streetlights began to turn on one by one, their glow reflecting off the slightly dusty windshield. The radio played softly, a song they used to listen to together. Yet that afternoon, it felt unfamiliar. As usual, Yin sat on the passenger seat, hugging her bag to her chest. Her eyes were fixed on the window, following the sky as it slowly shifted from warm orange to dull gray. There was no small talk, no quiet jokes. The silence inside the car felt unbearably heavy. Eventually, Jungkook slowed down and pulled over to the empty side of the road, beneath a row of trees whose leaves swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. He turned off the engine. The world outside kept moving, but inside the car, time seemed to stop. Yin, Jungkook finally said, his voice calm to calm. Yin turned to him quickly, startled. Something on his face made her chest tighten. It wasn't anger, not disappointment. It was a deep exhaustion. They were still sitting side by side, the space between them polite, safe, too safe for two people who had once quietly belonged to each other. I want to ask you something, Jungkook continued, staring straight ahead, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. And this time, I need you to be honest with me. Yin swallowed, her fingers clenched together on her lap. You said you wanted us to stay the same, he said quietly, and I respected that. I never brought up what happened that night. He paused, then turned to look at her. But now, you look stressed, like you're not happy at all. His eyes searched her face. Why? Yin opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her chest rose and fell, her breathing uneven. Jungkook took a long breath, as if gathering courage. Yin, what's the real reason you don't want to be with me? The question landed softly, no pressure, no demand, and somehow, that made it hurt even more. Tears instantly filled Yin's eyes. Her voice broke. I'm comfortable with you, Jungkook, really comfortable. She wiped her face roughly, frustrated with herself. As your best friend, I know you won't leave. We've come this far, 15 years. Her shoulders trembled. But I'm scared. Jungkook stayed silent, giving her space. I'm scared that if we date, and it doesn't work, Yin continued quietly, if we break up, That means I lose you completely, not just as a boyfriend, but as my best friend too. She looked at Jungkook, her eyes red, filled with fear she had kept to herself all this time. I'd rather have half of you than risk losing you entirely. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Jungkook slowly turned his body toward her. His voice softened lower, just like when he used to calm her down on her worst days. Listen to me for a second, okay? He said gently. I'm not saying relationships don't come with risks. I know they do. He gave a small smile, bitter but sincere. But Yin, we've been living with risks this whole time. You just didn't realize it. He lifted his hand, hesitated for a moment, then placed it between them, not touching, just close. You think I couldn't leave as a friend? You think I'm immune to that? His gaze softened. I stayed not because our label was best friends. I stayed because of my feelings. I chose to stay by your side all these years because I wanted to. If I didn't want to, I would have left, no matter what we were, friends or lovers. There's no guarantee in life, he continued quietly. But I know one thing, if we're honest, if we stop hiding, we could be stronger than this. He smiled faintly. I'm not forcing you to return my feelings. I'm just asking you to stop locking yourself up because you're scared. I want you to be more honest. His tone was warm, patient. If we fail as lovers, we'll fail together. But if we're happy, isn't that worth trying? Yin remained silent. She didn't know what to say. She didn't even know what she truly wanted. I don't need an answer right now, Jungkook added softly. Take your time. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And exactly that, made Yin's chest ache even more, because she could feel how deeply Jungkook cared. No demands, no pressure, loving her in a calm, mature way. And that scared her even more, because if one day Jungkook truly got tired, losing him would hurt far more than she had ever imagined. That night happened without any plan. They were at a city park, just trying to unwind after a long week buried in college assignments. The area was already getting quiet, with only the two of them still lingering, wanting to breathe in some fresh air. The rain from earlier that afternoon had left the paths and soil slightly damp. Yin looked cheerful, laughing softly when a beautiful butterfly suddenly landed on her arm. Jungkook, standing beside her, smiled along with her, but a few seconds later, the butterfly flew away again. Yin protested lightly, instinctively trying to chase after it, and then her foot slipped. Yin, Jungkook gasped. Her body lurched forward. By reflex, Jungkook grabbed her arm to keep her from falling, but his own footing slipped too. For a split second, the world seemed to spin before they went down. Yin hit the ground first. Jungkook fell right on top of her, but his arms braced on either side of her body, taking most of the impact. Their faces were only inches apart. Jungkook's breath was warm, mixed with a scent far too familiar. They froze. Yin's eyes widened before she instinctively turned her face away. Heat rushed to her cheeks, a deep blush spreading fast. The position, too close, too intimate, too real, dragged them both back to that night. Jungkook didn't get up right away. He held himself up with one arm, the other still planted on the ground. His gaze dropped, then lifted again, stopping on Yin's flushed face. Yin. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Yin held her breath. Jungkook leaned in slightly, not touching, just close enough to make goosebumps rise along her skin. His lips hovered near her ear. This position, he murmured honestly, no teasing in his tone, it reminds me of that night. Yin's breath caught, her heart pounded wildly. She could feel Jungkook swallow, holding back something that clearly hadn't faded yet. I've tried, Jungkook continued quietly. I really have. He finally lifted himself a little, giving Yin room to breathe, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. But even now, he said softly, almost like a confession he'd been holding in for too long, I still can't forget it. I can't pretend what we did that night never happened. And that was when Yin finally broke. She turned her face back toward him. Her hand moved first, trembling, as she touched Jungkook's arm, as if making sure he was real. Slowly, hesitantly, her hand slid up to his neck, pulling him just a little closer. She lifted her face and kissed him. The kiss was gentle, uncertain, but Jungkook didn't pull away. He kissed her back carefully, like he was afraid one wrong move would shatter the moment. The kiss deepened, not out of desire, but because of feelings that had been locked away for far too long. Jungkook's arms trembled as he supported his weight, making sure Yin stayed comfortable. His hands didn't wander, just stayed beside her head, holding himself back. When they finally parted, Jungkook rested his forehead against Yin's. Their breaths mingled, heavy and uneven. Yin's face burned red. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, looking at Jungkook with eyes glistening, not with sadness. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Jungkook replied softly. Yin swallowed, then said in a voice barely audible, "But I don't want to lose you." Jungkook closed his eyes briefly, like someone finally allowing himself to hope. Yin. His voice was hoarse. "I'm not going anywhere." Silence settled again. With flushed cheeks and a shy voice, Yin finally spoke. If you still want to." She took a deep breath. "I want to try. I want to be your girlfriend." Jungkook opened his eyes, stunned at first, then broke into a wide smile, relief impossible to hide. He finally stood up and reached out his hand to help Yin up. "Of course I want to," Jungkook said softly. "I've wanted that for a long time. I was just waiting for you to be ready." And this time, Yin smiled without hesitation, her face filled with relief.